My family ditched my graduation to attend my twins' art class, and a decade later, they returned, begging me to finance her ambition. But my quiet strategy turned their confidence into fear and left them speechless. I went 10 years without hearing a single word from my family, after they made it crystal clear where I stood on their priority list. Then, out of nowhere, I got contacted about my dad's condition. I figured maybe, just maybe, there was a shred of sincerity in all this. Spoiler, there wasn't. What started as a hospital visit turned into something way more twisted, and by the end of it, I realized I wasn't back for closure. I was back to confirm exactly why I left in the first place. I'm 31 male, and I should have seen it coming early on. Growing up, everything revolved around my twin sister Rebecca, also 31 female. Like she was the center of gravity in the house and the rest of us were just background noise. I wasn't mistreated in obvious ways, I was simply invisible. It didn't matter what I did. Grades, awards, showing up, none of it registered. If Rebecca sneezed, the whole house paused. If I broke a bone, it was an inconvenience. I'd ace every exam, win track meets, bring home trophies for things she couldn't even pronounce. And it still wasn't enough. But Rebecca would bring home a crayon drawing of a blob, and my parents would act like she'd painted the Sistine Chapel. "Oh wow, Rebecca, you're so creative, honey." They'd hang that garbage on the fridge like it was up for auction at Sotheby's. Meanwhile, I was over here solving algebra 2 years early and getting told not to show off. My parents treated me like the NPC people always skip dialogue with in Skyrim or Dark Souls. They weren't just biased, they were blatantly indifferent to anything I did. When I got into a top business school, they barely reacted. I remember telling them the news and my dad literally grunted without looking up from the TV. My mom said something like, "Well, good, that's what you're supposed to do. No, we're proud of you, no dinner celebration. Just the casual expectation that I should keep excelling silently while Rebecca got a parade for waking up before noon." Rebecca didn't even try. She was lazy, bratty, and so damn smug about it. She'd walk around acting like she was the second coming of Picasso even though her art looked like a sneeze on paper. She said she was going to take a year off after high school to figure herself out. That turned into 3 years of doing nothing except shopping and treating my parents' house like a hotel. They were totally cool with it too. She'd come downstairs at 2 p.m. in pajamas and my mom would still ask if she wanted her eggs soft or scrambled. Meanwhile, I was busting my ass with part-time jobs and assignments just to stay afloat. I needed a little help covering tuition. Not a full ride, just a little. And they hit me with, "You're an adult now, you need to learn responsibility." Mind you, they were still buying Rebecca new iPads every year and paying for pottery classes she never even attended. But I was entitled for asking for help with college tuition. So I stopped expecting anything from them. I didn't call, didn't text. I'd come home on holidays and just go through the motions. They didn't ask about my life, and I didn't offer. It was easier that way. I learned quick that the less I said, the less I'd get disappointed. Still, I thought maybe, just maybe, when graduation rolled around, they'd show up for that one day. I sent invites months in advance, called them, even followed up with emails. No response. I told myself they were busy, maybe planning something, maybe they'd surprise me. And just as you're probably thinking, they didn't. Graduation day came. I looked like an idiot scanning the crowd for familiar faces while everyone else had families waving, taking pictures, cheering like lunatics. I walked that stage alone. The seat I saved for them stayed empty. Later, after the ceremony, a cousin told me they didn't come because it was Rebecca's first day of community college art class. Some annex building next to a donut shop. At 21 years old, she was nervous, so they couldn't leave her alone. That's when it clicked. It had nothing to do with nerves or schedules, it was just them being them. They never really saw me. I was just the one who kept going so they didn't have to worry. But Rebecca was their little project, their precious disaster that always needed fixing. I walked back to my apartment, took off the cap and gown, sat on the floor, and stared at the wall for a while. Not sad, not mad, just done. Something switched off inside. I blocked their numbers, deleted them from everything, even took down the one framed photo I had with them from the hallway. It was time. I didn't need people who couldn't even bother to show up. As for Rebecca, I blocked her too. She never texted or called anyway unless she needed something, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let her ask for favors now that I was actually building a life. She could keep her third failed sketchbook business or whatever she was pretending to do. That chapter was closed, and I didn't feel guilty, not even a little. Once I cut them off, I didn't waste time sitting in the dark listening to sad playlists or any of that dramatic crap. I had bills and student loans screaming at me like they were trying to collect souls, with no magical safety net from loving parents who bailed the second it was time to show up. First thing I did was get a job, junior developer at a scrappy little tech company a bootcamp buddy hooked me up with. The place was barely holding together. Legacy code, missing documentation, half the team treating Git like Dropbox, but it paid. I kept my head down and headphones on, spent late nights pushing fixes no one asked for, watched crash logs until my eyes bled, and built tools just to make my own work easier. I became the guy who gets things done, which on dev teams is basically holding the infinity gauntlet. A year later, I leveled up to a mid-sized cybersecurity firm. Real pay, real team, real projects I could sink my teeth into. I focused on back-end systems and secure integrations, the stuff most devs avoided. I liked it, quiet, structured, actually useful. I moved out of that disaster shared apartment into my own one-bedroom. Clean, strong Wi-Fi, no weird roommates walking around half-naked talking to their crypto portfolios. I set up a full dev rig, dual monitors, standing desk, everything. My space finally felt like mine. Somewhere along the way I got obsessed with sustainable tech, especially in the vegan product space. I'm not vegan, not even close, but the data, demand, consumer behavior, and trend forecasting were on fire. I started coding personal tools to analyze those markets, spent weekends tracking e-commerce patterns, and built a simple app to spot gaps in supply chains and product categories. Eventually, I realized I could turn this into a real company, not just a hobby. I looped in a couple of friends, one with marketing chops, another a former coworker who wanted to invest. We agreed I'd prep everything in the background, and once I had a solid beta and 2 more investors locked, I'd leave my job and go full throttle. I was almost there, the product made sense, the numbers were solid, I had runway saved, no more sleepless nights about rent, and 0 strings attached. The only time I even thought about my family anymore was when people asked about holidays. I'd just say, yeah, I don't do family stuff, and keep moving. Every now and then, word got back to me through old classmates that Rebecca was still fumbling through life like a dropped phone. She'd tried an art commission business, got flamed for tracing someone else's work, and rage quit. Last I heard, she had a YouTube channel with 3 videos and 20 views, one of which was her explaining why capitalism was the reason she couldn't hold down a job. It was second-hand cringe, levels of bad, and I'll admit, hearing about it didn't make me sad. It just confirmed everything I already knew. I was finally living on my own terms. No guilt, no pretending, just me building something that was actually mine. Until that message came through. 10 years of silence. Not a word. Not even a typo. And then suddenly, like it was no big deal, Dad has cancer and isn't doing well. You should come back home. That was it. No how are you, no apology. Just a casual heads up like I'd been on vacation instead of completely cut out of their lives. Still, I went. Walking into that hospital after 10 years felt like time traveling into a bad memory. Same town, same faces, but everything felt smaller, colder. I wasn't there to cry or beg for hugs or reconnect. I came because they said my dad was dying, and I'm not the kind of guy who ignores that no matter how messy the past is. You don't get to choose your parents, but you do get to choose what kind of man you want to be. I just wanted to look him in the eye one last time, on my terms. The second I stepped off the elevator, I saw my mom. She stood up like she couldn't believe I was real, hands out like she was debating whether to hug me or slap me. "Oh my God," she breathed. "You actually came. I didn't say anything, just stood there." She pulled me into a hug before I could react. I stayed stiff. She smelled like the same floral detergent from when we were kids, the only familiar thing that didn't annoy me. "You've grown up so much," she said, stepping back with a forced smile. "You filled out. Must be eating well, huh?" I gave a small nod, trying to keep it civil, but barely 2 seconds later she hit me with it. No warm-up, no easing in. "You know," she said sweetly, "Rebecca's been having a rough time, and with everything going on, your father's hospital bills, the house repairs, all of it, it's been overwhelming. If you could just help a little, we'd be so grateful." I blinked and stared at her. "That's the first thing you're asking me?" I said. Not "how are you?" Not "must have been hard doing everything alone for 10 years, just straight to money." The fake smile slid right off her face. "Well, we raised you," she snapped, voice rising fast. "You act like you were some orphan. You lived under our roof, ate our food, and now that we need help you suddenly don't owe us anything?" I kept my tone calm, colder than I thought I could manage. You raised me the way someone keeps a spare tire in the trunk, only looked at me when the golden one wasn't working. She scoffed and crossed her arms like I was being dramatic. I'll help with the medical bills, I said flatly. That's it. I'm not paying for Rebecca's latest meltdown or whatever dream she abandoned this month. She's your sister, she hissed. She's your responsibility. She's 31 and still getting babied like she's in preschool. That's not my problem. Her face was somewhere between insulted and stunned, like it had never crossed her mind that I might actually say no. You think you're better than us now? She muttered. Just because you make some money coding? No, I said. I know I'm better than the guy you all thought I was, the one you ignored, the one you left behind without a second thought. That shut her up for a second. I walked past her and opened the door to my dad's room. There he was, the man who once couldn't be bothered to return a graduation call, now barely able to lift his head, tubes and wires everywhere, more machine than man. His skin was pale, eyes sunken. He looked human for the first time, not angry or distant, just worn down. His eyes met mine and he blinked like he wasn't sure I was real. You came? He whispered. Yeah, I said. He tried to sit up but didn't have the strength. I took the chair by the window. The air was heavy, sterile, everything felt like a waiting room for death. You look healthy, he rasped. I am. He gave a weak nod. Then we just sat in silence, the loaded, slow-burning kind where neither of us knew how to start or what to pretend to care about. I glanced at the corner. Rebecca was curled up in a chair, pretending to scroll on her phone, nails freshly done, outfit new. She didn't look up once. Dad cleared his throat. I know it's been a long time. It has. Another pause, machines beeping. I was wrong, he said finally, about a lot of things. I stayed silent. I wasn't fair to you, still nothing from me. I wanted to fix that, even if it's too late. I looked him straight in the eye. You want to fix it now? Not really a question. He nodded slowly. I want peace in the family before I go, he murmured. I looked out the window and let the words hang. Maybe later, I said. You should rest. Because if we were going to have that talk, it wouldn't be rushed and it wouldn't be on their terms. They called me back like I was a loose end they forgot to tie up. I was there to see for myself that I didn't need them anymore, and I saw it loud and clear. I went back the next day, not because I missed anyone, not to make things right, just to see how deep the rabbit hole went. The vibe the day before had been too carefully packaged. They didn't call me after 10 years just for hugs and sad smiles. There was something else. Rebecca wasn't there, thank God, just my parents. Mom sat beside the bed pretending to flip through a magazine. Dad looked worse, face waxy gray, the color you only see on people who've been dying for a while. You could hear every beep, every hiss of oxygen, every shuffle of paper like it was through speakers. A few minutes of useless small talk. Mom asked if I'd eaten. Dad said he was tired but better. All filler. Then the mood shifted. Mom started in again, voice soft and measured like she was pitching a charity case. Rebecca's been having a rough time, she said, folding her hands like she was on a talk show. She's really trying, but the world's not kind to people like her. She explained Rebecca had big ideas, wanted to start something creative, small but passionate, authentic to who she is. Then came the real ask. They wanted me to help financially and mentor her, bring her into the business I was building, give her guidance, structure, maybe even a position. They dressed it up like family duty, like my success had created a moral debt I now had to pay off in full. Dad turned to me, eyes foggy, and said, I'm not going to be around much longer. Before I go, I need to know your mother and sister will be okay. Then the guilt hammer. You're really going to throw your mother and sister in the streets after everything we did for you? This from the same man who 24 hours earlier admitted he hadn't been fair, that he had regrets. Suddenly none of that mattered because now he had a dying wish, and that apparently gave him a blank check to rewrite history. It was almost funny, the kind that makes you stare at the wall like, are you serious right now? I wasn't going to throw them in the street, but I also wasn't handing Rebecca a job she didn't earn or letting Mom guilt me into financing another screw-up just because she never learned to say no to her golden child. They tried to spin it like it would be poetic, the twins finally working together, some sitcom reboot. But I knew better. This wasn't bonding, it was relief. They needed someone to absorb the mess so they could wash their hands and say, see, it all worked out. Mom stayed quiet, watching, waiting for tears or a dramatic sigh followed by, you're right, I'll take care of them. All she got was silence. I stood up. As I said, I'll help with the hospital bills, medical stuff only, nothing else. Mom flinched. Dad looked disappointed, like I'd failed a moral test. She needs support, Mom muttered. She's had support her whole life, I said. She just never learned to stand on her own. Neither of them answered. The machines kept beeping. Dad turned his head and closed his eyes like he was too tired to argue. Mom stared at her hands. I walked to the door, paused, looked back one last time. Not for closure, just to remember what it looked like. The room, the people, the old lies recycled into new ones. I didn't slam the door or make a speech. I just left. In that moment, I wasn't their son anymore. I was their backup plan.
Walking out, I knew she was coming.
The silence after I left wasn't defeat, it was calculation. The guilt card didn't land, so now it was time to send in the closer, the favorite, the untouchable one, Rebecca. She caught me outside the hospital cafeteria while I was grabbing coffee. Fresh makeup, new sweater, holding her phone like she was closing a brand deal. She hadn't even looked at me the day before, but today she was all smiles. "Hey, stranger," she said, like we were best friends who lost touch for a few weeks. She launched right in, no warm-up, no pretense. "I'm really excited about the business idea. Mom told me you've been working on something in the vegan space. Super cool. I've been brainstorming branding and aesthetic stuff. I have a mood board if you want to see it." She kept talking, clearly rehearsed. Said she'd already posted on her socials about a new chapter. Hinted she'd been in talks for collaborations. She thought this was a done deal, pitching like she'd already been hired and just needed to pick her parking spot. What made it worse was how she talked to me. Like she was humoring me, like I was the tech guy who'd handle the boring stuff while she brought the vision. She even said, "You've always been the practical one, but I can bring the emotional depth. This could be our chance to finally be equals." I almost laughed at how completely she believed her own nonsense. I let her go on until she floated the idea of a launch party and said she could handle the creative side and be the face of the brand because, quote, "that's not really your strength anyway." That's when I cut in. "You done?" I asked. She blinked, caught off guard. I took a slow sip of coffee and looked her dead in the eye. "You're not part of my business, Rebecca." "Wait, what?" "You heard me. This isn't a family project. It never was." She stared like I'd slapped her. "I don't think you understand," she said, tone flipping fast. "This isn't just about me. This is about Dad, about what he wanted." I didn't flinch. "What Dad wants is for someone to clean up the mess he let you become," I said, "and I'm not volunteering." Her jaw tightened, the sweetness vanished. "So that's it? You're just going to leave us hanging after everything?" "Everything," I repeated. "Like missing my graduation because you had an art class? Like getting told I was selfish for asking for tuition help while you played with hobbies for a decade?" She scoffed. "God, you're still holding on to that. You need therapy." I leaned in a little, voice calm. "No, what I need is distance, and I already have that. Now I'm just setting the boundary. You think you're better than us now? I know I'm not worse." She stepped back, arms crossed, furious. "You're heartless. You think just because you have money you can treat everyone like trash. I think because I built my life from nothing without any of you, I get to decide who I share it with. And it's not you." She didn't respond, just stood there narrowing her eyes like she could burn a hole through me. I walked past her without another word. She muttered something behind me, probably an insult, maybe a warning. I didn't care. She didn't think she was asking for a favor. She thought she was cashing in a birthright. The look on her face when she realized I wasn't buying it was worth every year of silence. A few days later the silence became permanent. My father died at 2:17 a.m. on a Thursday. I know because the hospital left a voicemail. One tired-sounding nurse saying it was peaceful. That's the word they always use, like it makes it mean something. I didn't rush over or sit in the dark clutching old photos. I went back to sleep. When I showed up later that morning, the hallway felt off. Not heavy with grief, just urgent movement. I could hear low conversation from the room, not crying, just discussing. I walked in expecting silence or tears. Instead, I found my mother flipping through a folder of hospital documents, bank statements, and scribbled notes, while Rebecca sat beside the now empty stripped bed typing on her phone, probably crafting a vague "we lost a great man today" Instagram post with a crying emoji and a PayPal link. "You're late," Mom said. "They already cleared the body about 2 hours ago. He signed the release forms in advance." Rebecca didn't even turn around. "No one called me," I said. "I assumed you'd get the voicemail," Mom replied, like that was acceptable. There wasn't a shred of sadness in the room, just paperwork. "We have to talk about logistics," Mom continued. "The funeral, the house, the life insurance." Rebecca finally turned with a calm, practiced tone. "I was thinking, since you made it clear I won't be part of your business, it's only fair I get my share from Dad's estate so I can launch something of my own." She actually smiled, like this was normal minutes after her father's death. What estate? I asked, already knowing the answer. The house, the savings, the insurance, she said. Mom and I talked about it. We figured you'd want to handle the executor role. Of course, because I'm the responsible one, the stable one, the one they ignored for a decade but suddenly expect to wear a suit and manage the crumbs they think they're entitled to.
We need access to some of it soon.
Mom added. Funeral costs. And Rebecca has business-related things she needs to jumpstart before she loses momentum. I looked at both of them. No tears, no reflection, just strategy. He's been dead 6 hours, I said. Rebecca shrugged. And life goes on. What, you want us to sit around in black veils crying in the dark? I stared at the empty bed. Not because I missed him, but because he died exactly like he lived, quietly stepping out while someone else handled the mess. They kept talking budgets, what to sell, what to keep. Mom mentioned turning part of the house into an Airbnb. Rebecca wanted to liquidate assets fast so she could lease a downtown workspace. I'd heard enough. You know he barely had anything left, right? I said. The house isn't paid off, the insurance won't stretch, and whatever's left is going toward the hospital. Mom blinked. Rebecca frowned. That can't be right, she said. He said he had money saved. He had money, I corrected. Then he co-signed your loan, remember, for that digital art co-op you abandoned after 3 months? Rebecca's face froze. Mom's mouth tightened. You're twisting this, Mom said. No, I replied calmly. I'm just done lying about it. The room went quiet for the first time. I took a step forward. You brought me here to watch him die to help with the hospital bills, and maybe you thought you could guilt me into taking care of everything else too. That's not true, Mom stood. Really? I snapped. Then why was Rebecca already talking about her share of the estate before the body was cold? Why are you planning real estate conversions like this is a flipping project instead of a funeral? We're just trying to survive, she said. We're not like you. We don't have options. You had options, I said. You just made the wrong ones, over and over again. Rebecca scoffed. Wow, this is who you are now, Mr. High and Mighty because you write code and drink oat milk. No, I said. I finally understand you. I pulled a folded document from my coat pocket and dropped it on the counter. That's from my lawyer. I'm not handling the will, the money, or anything to do with Dad's stuff. I already signed papers to make sure of it. Mom's eyes widened. You what? You heard me? I'm not touching a single dime, and I'm not bailing either of you out again. Whatever debts are left, whatever plans you had, figure it out. Rebecca stepped forward. You can't do that. I just did. The silence was so thick you could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. You didn't lose a father today, I said. You lost your safety net. Grieve that if you want. Then I walked out, slow, steady, not looking back once. 6 months later, I was standing in my own office on the 18th floor, overlooking the downtown skyline. The paint was still fresh, my company's logo not even etched into the glass yet, but the servers were humming, pre-orders sold out, and our analytics dashboard looked like a rocket launch. We made it. What started as messy code in a leaky one-bedroom apartment was now a full product line, plant-based, wellness, and eco-friendly supplements tracked through a custom logistics app I wrote myself. Backed by a real team, investors, legal, and major supplier partnerships. Not a single cent of it shared with my family. After the funeral, I followed through, paid the hospital bill in full, quietly, no ceremony, no speech, then cut the cord completely. New number, updated records, erased the rest. I didn't owe them an explanation, another call, or a piece of my success. But burned bridges still get crawled over sometimes. One Thursday morning, an email hit the company HR inbox, subject position inquiry from Rebecca. One-line message, I'd like to apply for a creative leadership role with your company. I believe I'm the right fit given our shared values and family legacy. No resume, no portfolio, not even an Instagram link, just that smug, delusional sentence. I laughed out loud alone in my office, forwarded it to HR with deny immediately. Do not engage, and saved it in a folder labeled in case I ever miss them. That wasn't the only attempt. Once the company started getting press, eco-startup blogs and features, cousins I hadn't spoken to since high school started texting, "Hey man, just checking in. So proud of what you're building, let's catch up." One invited me to a barbecue with no address and no mention of the last 10 years. I didn't reply. Mom tried reaching me through a mutual family friend saying she regretted how things went. I wished her well and left it there. I wasn't bitter or angry anymore. I was done. Meanwhile, Rebecca was drowning. The loan she took in Dad's name went into default. Collection warnings issued. She started a GoFundMe titled Surviving After Grief, full of half-truths, painting herself as a struggling artist abandoned by her brother. It raised $50 from one high school friend who commented, "Hope things get better." Mom was renting out the basement just to keep the lights on. One tenant even emailed my company asking if we'd sponsor Rebecca's garage art pop-up. We declined. Somewhere in the middle of all this, between late-night builds and investor calls, I met someone. Low-key, sharp, no fake small talk, just real unfiltered presence. We started hanging out. She helped me assemble office furniture, sent food when I forgot to eat, called me out when I treated sleep as optional. She has her own life, her own goals, but still makes room without strings or lectures. I'm not rushing it, just enjoying what actual family feels like. Someone who shows up because they want to, not because they're owed. Some nights I look around my apartment, shelves stocked, inbox full, team chat buzzing, and realize this is what building your own legacy looks like. It's not loud or dramatic, it's just yours. They lost me a long time ago. They just didn't realize it until the money ran out.